you know, we just did, and we were in the appellate court, wouldn't even hear a case. They just waited 2 years. They made us wait for 2 years while nobody did anything, while we weren't allowed to see Luke, and for 2 years. And on the day that they have to rule by 2 years. Exactly 2 years, they dismissed it. They heard a couple things. Oh, okay, well, you're indigent. Fine, you don't have to pay this, but, you know, we're not even going to listen to all these points, these points, these points. And it was just, if you were going to dismiss it, why didn't you dismiss it early enough? You know, Luke's life is at stake. These things are happening to Luke. You know, pictures were his blisters and the cuts under his arms and the black eyes and the swollen side of his face and just bruises on his shins. And, you know, I asked Luke, when Camille was in there and she was just rubbing his head, and she said, Luke kicked me, didn't you, Luke? And Luke was just like, ugh, he'd move away from her. He always turned towards me. And when she left the room, I said, honey, and I looked at his legs, because I always checked his legs and arms and things, and I was like, he had a bruise this long on his shins that was blue, that was deep purple. And I said, honey, what happened to you? And I said, Luke, did she kick you back? And Luke, he looked around, and he goes, and I said, oh my gosh. And you know, Luke could answer questions correctly. He wasn't going to lie. And I realized that they were just treating him awful. And I just, you know, I was helpless to do anything. No one would do anything. No one has done anything. And it's still going on. It's still, you know, there. Now it's in the Supreme Court. The first one they just dismissed. The reason they dismissed it, and this is what Dolehite, who is Scott Killo's attorney. Now, Scott Killo, the ad litem, had to get an attorney to represent him in the Court of Appeals and in the Supreme Court. So pretty much what happens is, if this is what I was told, if we send something into the Supreme Court and they refuse to file an answer, then the Supreme Court throws it out because there's no argument there involved. So they threw a case out. Now this second time we've put in 3 briefs before them. One about Scott Killo filing for he wanted Tyler to pay $94,000, the county to pay that. Because what happened was he went to charge my husband and I, and then he's like, oh, gosh, I threw out of the case. I had an in limine. I threw out of the case. I can't get money from her. Okay, we're going to the sisters. We're going to make the sisters pay for this. Well, then what happened is when they charged my sisters and they said, you're going to have to pay this $92,860 dollars, then my sisters filed indigency. They said, we're on Title 45, which is they're on Social Security. They've retired. They're on Social Security. Therefore, you're called indigent. So they filed indigency papers. The judge says, you can't file those papers. I'm not accepting those papers. You're not indigent. So we have that before the Supreme Court. And, of course, Killo has added on to that. Now it's up to $94,000. Plus he wanted another $9,400 for whatever. And so he's asking Smith County for all of his times he took us to court. He wants the people of Smith County to pay him $110,000 for all the time that he kept this in court and kept arguing, trying to bring me to court and make me pay, bring me to court and this. And you know, it's just, you know, litigation that was unneeded. And yet he would tell the judge, he'd say, Your Honor, we have to keep coming to court. And because of her, this has carried on for 2 years. It's all Mrs. McLendon's fault, and she has gotten all this. It's her fault that this money has escalated to the point that it's escalated. And it's because of her, because she refuses to settle. So the whole thing ended up to be is she refuses to settle and give the father guardianship. And so she is guilty of causing all of these charges because she won't just sign over the guardianship to the father. So that's basically what he told him that I was guilty of. That was what they finally decided. I was guilty of that. And it was just ludicrous. You know, and again, like you saw Jeff Rambin's site in Tyler, and so he sees the thing from the Court of Appeals, 12th Court of Appeals, and he writes in, he goes, oh, I made the mess, but I don't have to clean it up. There's McLendon, and she starts all this litigation, and then she's making Smith County pay for it. It's like, you know, the only thing we wanted was guardianship, and the only other thing we filed was for the removal of the temporary guardian, which we never got heard. Everything that we filed was never heard in court. Not one thing that we brought, whether it was visitation, revocation of the do not resuscitate,
the order asking for a statutory probate judge for this case to be taken out of this county because of the bias and prejudice, or whether it was, bring someone else in. We wanted the judge disqualified before he even came onto the case because they transferred it from this trial attorney, this trial attorney, this trial attorney. It was just, we were going in circles and we were getting nowhere. And so that was my fault, that we had all of this before the court and nothing got heard. But every time Kilo brought us before the court, and he said, I did not, but he filed for discovery 18 months after the fact. Now, mind you, have 6 months to file for discovery, okay? 18 months after, when my attorney has withdrawn from the case, then all of a sudden he starts sending us all these papers and said, I want to know all your doctors, I want to know their addresses, I want you to sign releases for medical records, I want you to sign this, and just going on with this litigation. And then he told the judge we never filled them out. And we'd sent them to him twice. So finally, the third time, we went and filed it in the courthouse. Well, when we filed it in the courthouse, he didn't know. So he goes and he says, Your Honor, they have not filed this done. I said, I have a file stamp copy right here. You look, my sister said, you look in the records. Look right there. The records are right there. Look in the records. We have a file stamp copy. And then he tries to just, he crawfishes and goes, well, Your Honor, I didn't know that. I didn't, and it's just, the whole thing is just such a fiasco that it was just, and like Judge Getz said, this isn't anybody we should be fighting over. I just couldn't even, I was just like, well, maybe not for you, but this is my child, and if you don't think we should be fighting over it, fine. Just, why is he so worried about getting the guardianship?